So let me thank you for the opportunity to express my views on the particular issue that you raised. Now, in answering that question, you had to make reference to the past
Right.
and what would have transpired. And you had to go right back to Cipriani, you had to go right back to Chuba, Buzz Butler, and others
Right.
who were trade unionists, but there was an element of politics.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different time now. Probably it was necessary because they were seeking not just change for the working class, but social change.
Right.
And in order to achieve social change, sometimes the best vehicle is a political vehicle. And therefore they may have jumped on that. And they did succeed to some extent, because here we are in 2025, reaping some of the benefits that their labor, right, both in the political sphere and as trade unionists. So sometimes that is necessary. In terms of whether or not I believe that trade union should be involved in politics and so on, the mechanism by which change take place is the politics. Now, I always recall when I was doing West Indian history, I always enjoyed slavery, the topic, and I used to pay special attention to the abolitionists who would have been fighting for the abolition of slavery. And a statement that was made by one of the abolitionists, while they had general support and support from a lot of people, things wasn't changing. And the attacks, they get to realize, wait now, the only way slavery could abolish and a real change come about, we had to go to the parliament. Parliament has to make a change. But that's the only way. And sometimes parliament is necessary in order to make legislation and so on to bring about any real change. I don't know, in terms of the current government. Well, I don't know. This is the UNC and the coalition of interest. And the coalition of interest in the main represented the trade unions, right? Some were prominent up front with them, others were in the background, but nevertheless given the support, right? And I personally would have supported the UNC and the coalition of interest on the basis of, one, we feel that the previous government really and truly had no respect and no care for the trade union movement, right? It's like, well, all they could do all they want to know, that in itself is a kind of recipe to incite people. So you could imagine we went to our members because we felt disrespected. We are their representative. And we didn't use we head, as we would say, and know that that kind of disrespect that the government was giving to the trade union movement, labor, right? Other things could have emerged. Because I don't know if you recognize, the government would have offered a 4%. And every time I speak to my members, I have 17,000 members. Some in the private sector, the majority in the public sector. And they never push us to take 4%. In fact, if you do your research, some of those unions, especially in the public sector, who accepted 4%, they did it under duress. Do your research and you will see they didn't willingly go and accept that, but they faced threats. If you ain't take it in for 3 years, we'll give you for 10, If you ain't take it for 6 years, we'll give you for 10. Of course, the PSA went and the Privy Council ruled that the industrial court didn't have that authority. Policy is shaped by the government. And if you have the opportunity to be in a place where you could shape policy.
Right.
And that opportunity presents itself to you as a trade unionist. You're thinking about your members, and you want to assure that the former regime, you understood where they stood, and therefore, if another opportunity comes, you should embrace it. Fundamental right. In most countries, freedom of association. While we don't face much restriction here, but we're under a state of emergency, right? And the government would have said, maybe bearing in mind that whole question of freedom of association. Well, you could gather and you could still this and you could still that and whatever, right? Probably having that in the back of their mind. But generally, I'm of the view that we would have had few restrictions as far as that is concerned, other than a state of emergency, as I say, where persons' freedom to associate and so on is limited, right? But we have the media, which is another story, free press, inverted commas, and so on. So we really ain't doing too bad as far as that is concerned, right? But of course, anything could always be improved, right? There has been some attacks on our freedom in the recent past, one of the issues coming to mind, but I just can't recall, where the rights of persons to express their views and so on, is challenged, and some people would not openly express their views for fear of reprisals and so on, in all spheres, really. But generally, as from where I sit, I think we as a people has that right, and it's something we should guard. We should really guard that right to express ourselves and to associate with whomever we choose. Yeah, I too am of the view that the process for recognition, especially when you go other places, my brother, right here in the Caribbean, right? When you look at what's the benchmark, what's the criteria, right? Workers want to be in a union, and they put in all kind of impediments in the way to block that from happening. Why in Trinidad and Tobago the law says 50% plus one? In some of our Caribbean countries, 20%. 20% of the workers say they want to be in the union in 6 months' time. But in our system, and the board has to follow the law. The board has to follow the law. It's not that the members of the board really and truly deliberately want to impede, but you have to follow what the law says. I know there is a Iraq committee treating with reviewing the Industrial Relations Act, and that is one of the areas that we paying much attention to. I'm talking about as a trade unionist now, not a member of the board, but being a member of the board, I have a good appreciation of what takes place from application to recognition, right? And we are attempting to make that more easier, right? Workers want a trade union. We should not try to impede that, but we should facilitate that. Yes? Nobody funds the trade union. The trade union is funded by its members. This union is 78 years old. And as I tell folks, the only source of income and the only reason why we stand in is because workers, 78 years coming down the road, decided that they will join trade unions, and the necessary resources provided by them. We don't get government subvention. We never did. Right? And so, in terms of resources, some trade unions, like this one, we went into a business relationship with Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union, where we formed a construction company. All of that opened a business opportunity, so at least the union could get some means of finance and so on to do its programs and so on. But generally, the ILO might send something, you know, but it's a shame. In some countries, the government budget, inside of the budget, there is a sum for the labor movement in the country.
Yeah.
You know? But that don't happen here. Hopefully, as we go down the road, I know the last government under Keith Rowley did offer, right, the trade union something. But I remember JTAM said they didn't want it. Natuk said they want it. But at the end of the day, nobody got anything. Right? Nobody got anything. Yes. So that's where we are, and we'll continue to try to be creative and see, because we understand that Jews alone, really and truly, can't really we partner with anyone of like mind. Right? Remember, the goal is about bringing about social justice. Right? And when I really give some thought to social justice, what that mean? What that really means, right? Is everything that is done in this world, whether it's goods or service, who it is intended to the end use to be the end user. People, you don't do things, develop things for fish and bird. It's for mankind, right? And we have the view that anything that will enhance and improve and promote social justice, right? We will support that. Any group, right? We are affiliated with some external agencies, the IUF and others, PSI, International Trade Union, Fraternity, and so on. Within our union too, we have a women's executive council with a lady. We have a men's forum. We have a men's forum where the men in the organization, let's come sit down and discuss issues specific to men. Then we have a youth forum where persons under 35. So the union facilitates those kinds of gatherings and those kinds of forums where you have different sectors of the membership, which is a reflection of the society on the whole, where we will focus on issues specific to those three groups that I mentioned, and the union and all.